Hello. In this quick video, I want to give you an overview of the Linux file system that's used on your Ubuntu virtual machine. In particular, we want to talk about two key things. We want to talk about how the files and directories are arranged on your Linux machine, and we want to talk about how to navigate from one directory to another using the command line tools on a terminal. So let's start this overview of the file system with a picture. So here's a picture representing the file system on your Ubuntu virtual machine. If you notice, at the top up here, the root of the file system is at the very top. So this brings to mind a metaphor of a tree, and you'll often hear that term describing Linux file systems. They call it a tree structure. It's an inverted tree with the root on top and the branches and the leaves growing in a downward fashion. The root of the file system is on top, and your home directory is right here. So in this case, for my demonstration, that's me, Nardi. But if you notice, it's hierarchical in nature. So the hierarchy starts at the root, and from the root, you can get to any location in the tree by following a path. So to get to my home directory, I would start at the root. I would walk down the path to a directory called home. And within the home directory in Linux, there are one or more subdirectories containing content for individual users on the machine. When you set your Ubuntu virtual machine up, it was probably just you as a single user, so the only directory inside the home directory will be you. In this case, it's Nardi. Within my home directory, in my case Nardi, there are multiple subdirectories. In this case, I have desktop, documents, downloads, and more. You will have these same subdirectories in your home directory on your virtual machine. You may notice down here I included one more layer. So inside my notebooks subdirectory, there are three more subdirectories, one called content, one called images, and one called miscellaneous. So this is the hierarchical nature of the structure, and what we want to explore next are some command line tools to move up and down this tree and find our way around the file system. Let's look at that. So now I'm inside my virtual machine, and I have two programs open. I have a file navigator, which is very similar to the one you probably use in Windows. It's called Files, and that's this program here. And I have a terminal program open. I've squished the windows down on these to try to line them up side by side so that you can see how things appear in the graphical file navigator as well as on the terminal program. So let's look at some of the commands that you'll use to navigate through the file system in Linux. The first thing I want to point out is this little command prompt right up here. So let me blow that up nice and big. So if you notice, it has my name and it says Nardi at Ubuntu. Nardi is my username on the machine. Your machine is called Ubuntu when you set it up. So this is important if you were in a networking environment and you were connecting from one machine to another over network. This little prompt kind of tell you what machine you're on. But the real key part is this right here. That little symbol called the tilde in blue right before the $sign. This tells you where you are in the file system, and it's key, and it's probably a good idea to talk about what tilde is. Tilde is a shortcut in Linux for your home directory. So first let's take a look at what the tilde key is. So here's your keyboard. There is where the tilde key is. It's just to the left of the number 1, and you use the shift key to get to it. Here's a little more enlarged version of it. You can see next to the number 1 key, this little squiggly line up here is called the tilde. In Linux, that's the shortcut for your home directory. So if you look over here, you'll notice in the graphical file navigator that I'm in my home directory. These are shortcuts to different directories here on the left. When I click on that, you can see the content in my home directory. You would see similar files in your home directory. Now, when you first start the graphical file navigator, it may look like this. This is an icon view. I prefer the list view, so if you click on that button right there, it will toggle it from icon to list. This is just how I prefer to view it. If you come to the graphical file navigator over here, you can see that I maneuver between directories just by clicking on them like I would in Windows. So if I click on the desktop, you'll notice that it says the folder is empty. In the command line tool, if I want to change to the desktop, the command we want to learn here is cd. That's shorthand for change directory. And I type the directory I want to change to, so desktop. Again, the prompt here gives you a location about where you are. So I was in my home directory, that's tilde. Now I'm in the desktop directory, and it says, here I am in desktop. So now that I've navigated to my desktop directory in Linux, in the terminal, I would like to see the contents. In the graphical file navigator, you can see the contents in a window, but what does that look like in a terminal? Well, the Linux command to list the contents of a file is ls. So when you type ls, what you see is the contents of the directory you're currently working in. In this case, it's empty, so I don't see anything. We'll see what a directory with some content looks like using ls in a moment. So if we go back to our file navigator over here, our graphical navigator, you notice that I'm in my desktop and it's empty. If I want to go back to the previous directory, I can click on home and it takes me back. But how do you go back to the previous directory from inside the terminal? Well, let's just jump back to that picture real quick and talk about what a previous directory is. Every directory in the structure has a parent, except for the root. Technically speaking, the root is considered to be its own parent, but ignore that for a moment. Every directory below the root has a parent, all the way up to the root. So if I come down here, the parent directory of music is my home directory, Nardi. The parent directory of home here is the root directory over here. So there would be great if there was a shorthand way to refer to the parent directory of any directory that you're currently working in, and there is, and it's ... So back in my terminal, I'm on my desktop. I have listed the contents of the directory, but it didn't come up with anything because it's empty. So now I want to change back to the parent directory of the desktop, which is my home directory. So cd ... will change me back. And now let's use ls and see what's in my home directory. So when you type ls, now you see a list of files that looks the same as what you see in the graphical file navigator when you click on that. You can see the same files listed here as are shown on the right. We'll explore ls more in future lessons. There are a lot of options that go with it that make it really functional. But for now, just use ls to list the contents of a directory and it'll help you navigate. So I jump back to our picture real quick. Let's say we're in our home directory, which we are now, and I want to navigate from my home directory down here to this images directory. So I would like to do that all with one command. I don't want to type cd notebooks to get there and then type cd images to get to there. I just want to do it all in one command. Let's see how that works. So I'll come back up to my terminal window, and from my home directory, all you do is express the path with slashes, forward slashes in between each directory. So cd notebooks is the first one I want to go to, and then from there I want to go to images. So cd notebooks / images. Now I can leave this slash at the end off because it knows it's a directory. And here I am inside my images directory. In my graphical navigator, I could do the same thing. I'm in my home directory. I could go find notebooks and double click on it. And then in there, I could double click on images and see the content. So I can now get a listing of the content of the images directory inside the terminal program using ls. So when I type ls, you'll see a bunch of files listed. And earlier we saw examples of directories which had slashes after them. When you don't see the slash, that tells you it's a file. Again, ls has many, many more options that will provide good information about the file system. We'll explore that later. But for now, you just notice that here on the graphical navigator side, all the content in the images directory, and I know I'm there because I can see across the top, I'm in notebooks, images, and over here in my terminal window, I change directory to notebooks, images, and when I list the contents, I can see everything in there. All right, I'm back at the picture. So we're in the images directory, and now I want to go all the way back to my home directory, Nardi. Let's look at two different ways to do that. The first is I can go back to my home directory at any time by typing cd all by itself. So in Linux, it's set up so that if I just type cd with no destination and hit enter, it'll take me home. So there's my directory. And that's a great tip if you get lost. If you're buried in the file system somewhere and you're not sure how to get out, just type cd and cd will take you home. So let me put myself back in my notebooks directory and the images. And now I'll show you another way to navigate back. If I wanted to go up to, from our images to notebooks and from notebooks back home, I could do that by chaining two dots. Remember, ... is a parent. So I can say cd ... /... and that will also take me home. Takes me back to my home directory here as well. So two ways to navigate. You can navigate up and down the file system by chaining ... or by chaining directories and a destination further down in the file system. Okay, so I've cleared my screen and I'm currently in my home directory. And we can tell that I'm in my home directory because I can see this little tilde. Let me just change to my desktop directory here real quick. And my prompt changes to show me that I am at my desktop directory. But you may notice that it really just reflects the very endpoint of the destination. Every file or folder in your file system is located in a fully expressed path beginning at the root. So while I just see desktop there, technically, that is the endpoint of a very long destination. And to get that fully expressed destination, we use a command called pwd, print working directory. Now this tells me, okay, starting at the root of the file system, which is slash, I am in /home, and inside there I am in /nardi, and inside nardi I'm in /desktop. So here's some key takeaways from this short video. The file system inside of a Linux computer is like an inverted tree. We call the top of the tree the root, and the branches and leaves grow down from there. Every directory in the file system, with the exception of root, has a parent, and we can represent that parent from wherever we are using .. To change from one directory to another in the file system, we use the cd command, which is shorthand for change directory. To list the contents of a directory in the file system, we type ls, which is shorthand for list. Our home directory is represented by the shortcut character tilde, which is next to the number 1 on your keyboard. And finally, to get a fully expressed path from the root of the file system to wherever you are, you would type pwd, which is short for print working directory. So I hope that was helpful. The best way to learn this material is practice. So I recommend getting your hands on the keyboard and trying these techniques out. Practice moving around the file system in Linux, and if you get lost, type cd and you'll get home. Talk to you soon.